I got interested in economics at the age of 19 when I was working for a Norwegian student organization, and we were collecting money for schools in the Andes. And I came to Lima and found that the people who were doing the same jobs as people did in Norway, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, the waiters, they were not less efficient than the people in Norway, but they were much poorer. So I thought this was a question that I could look up in a dictionary and find solutions when I came home, and I couldn't. So this started my interest. But I was for a long time destined to be in business. So I studied economics at St. Gallen. I have an MBA from Harvard, and then I did the unconventional thing and getting a PhD in economics after that. So I worked for 20 years in industry, and then re-established myself in the academic world. So it's a long trajectory, and I think what makes my angle slightly different from others is that I have a lot of practical experience both in business and in consulting. So I've been working in 51 different countries, and I'm used to seeing things in context. And I think this is one of the real problems of economics, that it has developed into a context-free science. You know, one size fits all.
So is this context, this notion of context applied to economic models, what we call fact-based models?
Yeah, well, you could call it experience-based or fact-based or historical view. I think the big difference is between mainstream economics, where you have a model and you try to explain the world through that model. So economics has become the science of using a particular tool to look at the world through an equilibrium metaphor. And I think the equilibrium metaphor should not be the only one. I think there are situations where you have cumulative causations coming up and down and creating out of equilibrium situations. So we are in the situation described by Mark Twain, that if you choose a hammer as your tool, you're going to spend the rest of your life looking for things that look like nails. Mm-hmm. And this is what economics are doing. You know, we instead of saying, well, here we have a real world problem, what angle should we look at this from? What tool should we use? We come to all situations with the same tools.
Do you think that these new tools that we need do they exist already, or do we have to invent new tools? I'm thinking, for instance, of evolutionary economics, where you might use some notion of context.
Yes, I think the evolutionary paradigm, which is based on innovations and saying, well, saying that innovation is what produces the change in the kind of Darwinian metaphor. That's useful, but I also think it's useful just to reinvent what used to be the historical school. That is essentially consisting of connecting previously unconnected facts. Well, if you have a financial crisis, you can say, well, what were the other financial crises? And you can make a list of them from 1720 and say, well, how did it develop in 1720? That was the first really international financial crisis, at the same time in Amsterdam, in London, and in Paris. And you can compare it and see, well, what's new here? And this is I think this is the useful approach, that you actually use history as a bank of data, and you go into history with the new question in mind and say, well, this is the old mechanisms. Well, here now there are some new mechanisms. Let's say financial crisis has normally produced deflation. But now we are in a different situation without a gold standard. So maybe we also have inflation, right? So perhaps the level of ambition should be what Karl Menger expressed as economics should be a map of the forces at work. And you can have inflationary forces and deflationary forces at work at the same time. And then you have to analyze in, well, in this context, which one is going to win and in what areas. So I think resurrecting history is important, and also having a varied toolbox. I think sometimes equilibrium is fine, but sometimes it's completely irrelevant, and this is what should be reflected in our toolbox. Swedish economist Erik Reinert, who was the main advisor to the Wallenberg family, he used to say that the problem with economics is that economists have locked themselves up in their own toolbox, in their own tool shed, and I think this is true. So let's open the tool shed and look for useful tools.
What are your expectations about NES, so to go through this way of conceiving a new social science?
Well, I think NES heading non-equilibrium social sciences is an excellent title. And I think it's important that this project tries to make an inventory of what actually exists out there, so that you don't embark on reinventing wheels that have already been invented. And I think it should be an inclusive project that, as you know, any metaphor is okay as long as it contributes to understanding non-equilibrium situations. So I hope it can be a very inclusive process where we can replenish the toolbox and hopefully solve problems like poverty in Africa and financial crisis, which are clearly not solved in the mainstream economics today.
So my last question would be a little bit provocative. Why do you think people in Lima they work differently from other countries? Or why do they work differently from one country to the other?
Well, I think my observation was that they didn't work differently. You know, the bus driver in Lima is not less efficient than the one in Norway or in New York, but the result is different. Yes, and I think therefore it's important to see that economic society is a synergy, is a synergetic element. And this is a very old insight. When the Western Roman emperor asked the mayor of Florence, Brunetto Latini, in the 13th century, what is it that makes Florence so rich? His answer was, il ben comune, the common weal. So wealth is a product of synergies. But economics at the moment is not very good at seeing synergies at all, because it's focused on the individual. You know, when Margaret Thatcher said there is no such thing as society, she was just repeating one of the assumptions of neoclassical economics. So we have a problem that what used to be assumptions to make the mathematics work have become truths, and these truths are really not truths at all. They, you know, what used to be assumptions have developed into what in effect are lies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.